Young Eve, carefree in the sunset and practicing ballet with her father, Javier, feels like the happiest girl in the world. He comments on how much she looks like her sister, which dampens her mood since she can't remember her. To cheer her up, Javier gifts her a ballerina dome music box before leaving. Just like there's a calm before the storm, trouble visits that night when the house gets ambushed by assassins from underwater. They shoot down the guards on duty and successfully gain entry. Javier notices movement in the house and immediately intercepts one assassin who tries to sneak up on him, taking him down before going to get Eve. He's already prepared her for something like this, and she follows him without questions. He takes down more men in a heated fight, then puts Eve in hiding before throwing a smoke canister. He then goes to face the never-ending assassins. He manages to hold his own, but unfortunately, one man versus several men is just too much. With Javier subdued, the Chancellor comes in, accusing him of taking what wasn't rightfully his after he was accepted into their cult and given their daughter. Unfortunately, his actions resulted in his wife's passing, and the cult has come for him. The Chancellor asks about Eve, but Javier only spits at his feet.
Charming.
He is hit because of this, but it doesn't stop him from calling the Chancellor out for his actions. The Chancellor isn't bothered by this. Instead, he takes a pistol and leaves just one bullet inside before spinning the chamber and closing it.
You wanted choices.
If Javier shoots himself successfully, Eve will be safe. But if he shoots the Chancellor, he and Eve will be eliminated. Javier takes the pistol, pointing it to his head, ready to save his daughter, but she calls out to him from her hiding place where she's seeing everything unfold. This brings everyone's attention to the spot, but Javier quickly attacks. The Chancellor leaves while Javier fights for Eve's safety, taking some men down. One almost plunges a knife into his eye, but Eve comes out of hiding and shoots the assassin. Javier quickly calms her down, showing her the dome before they make their escape. He sets a bomb, and they continue moving. Unfortunately, he gets shot, but he still continues moving. When they get outside, the house is blown up in flames and the Chancellor leaves. Javier manages to get to the ocean, but he has lost so much blood due to the shots and wounds on his body, making him slump. He apologizes to Eve, regretting the type of life she will experience before passing away. Eve is in pain as she tries calling out for him, but he's already gone. Funny how life can change from just sunset to sunrise. Afterward, a man named Winston approaches a sad Eve, who's just staring at the music box in a government building and begins talking to her about her father. Javier was a member of the Ruska Roma, and Winston suggests taking her to Javier's family, and left with no other choice. She takes his hand and they both leave together. She is taken to see the director of the Ruska Roma, and she talks to Eve in kind words, accepting her.
Those men took your past. Don't let them steal your future.
Outside the office, Winston gives Eve a coin, promising to always be at her service before leaving. Another member named Nogi introduces herself to Eve and tells her a little about Javier. He was what they call Kikimora, a spirit to those with darkness in their heart. She can be vengeful and destructive, but she can also be a protector to the innocent. 12 years later, Eve has now grown into a beautiful lady, but she faces difficulties in her ballet.
Your wounds before you get sepsis and we have to cut off your feet.
However, she is really good in the lethal fighting and shooting aspects of training. Though, despite how good she is, she hasn't leaned into her full potential. Nogi, who's in charge of training them, gives her a pep talk of encouragement, and that changes everything for Eve. Back in the dorm, she realizes that her friend Tatiana is gone and goes to confront the director.
Things are gone. Did something happen to her?
Unfortunately, Tatiana didn't have the killer instinct Eve had, so she's been put on a different path. Where there's pain in Eve, there's only sadness in Tatiana. Afterward, Eve is faced with the final stage of training, where she makes her first kill. Well, more like second, since she already had her first when she was little. Later that night, she sadly looks at the glass dome, but her attention is drawn by a group of students. She heads downstairs to see the director with a man who is branded on the back. She recognizes him as the Baba Yaga, who is John Wick, and asks how she can get out of the theater. She wants to start doing what he does, but he tells her she still has a choice, so she can still leave.
Adorable. You still have a choice.
Later, Nogi gives Eve her first assignment, which is to protect a woman named Katla Park. Her father is their primary charge, and he is concerned that his competitors may try to get to him by ransoming his daughter. She is given a gun, but is surprised to find rubber bullets inside.
Rubber bullets?
On the speculated time, Eve goes to the club where Katla is and tells Nogi she's in position through the comms. Soon after, a threat approaches Katla, and when Eve discovers that he is indeed harmful, she moves in that direction. The men begin a fight in order to take Katla away, but Eve fights back. Despite being the only one, she manages to take down all the men that come at her, even though she gets a few hits and throws. She then proceeds to meet the leader who's dragging Katla away. They get into a fight, and with the help of a pickaxe, she manages to gain the upper hand. She pulls Katla away, but Katla is hesitant to follow anyone. She's actually right to be after everything she's witnessed. Eve calms her down, promising her she's safe, and Katla finally follows her out of the club. In the successful completion of her first assignment, she is given a tattoo as approved by the director, now an official Kikimora of the Ruska Roma. Over the next couple of days, she completes another assignment and she's paid for it. Before leaving, she makes sure to remove all her knives from the lifeless men. Looking like she can't hurt a fly, she heads to her car and drives off, but is suddenly ambushed by a man on the road. He uses his SUV to collide with her car and forcefully pushes it back, shooting in the process. They engage in a brutal fight, which gets her stabbed in the shoulder. Never one to be put down, she fights regardless and brutally ends the man's life. Just as she's about to leave, she notices a mark on the man's hand and immediately gets a flashback of the same mark that was on the men who took Javier's life years ago. She takes the now severed hand to the director and tells her about the mark.
Look at the scar. I've seen this before. That's the same scar as the men who murdered my father.
She's angry that the director knew who the people are, but didn't tell her all this while. The director explains that people with the mark have no rules, consequences, or mercy. They have an old pact where they don't interfere with the Ruska Roma, and they, in turn, don't interfere with them. Eve wonders who the rules are serving, but the director tells her that there must be rules when dealing with blood, unless nothing survives. Eve is obviously not okay with this, and she angrily wonders why a tribe would try to kidnap a child. Seeing the vengeance in her eyes, the director warns that she won't find them, and hunting for them would only bring chaos. She orders Eve not to pursue it, and Eve eventually agrees. Though it seems Eve isn't going to drop it anytime soon from the look on her face. As expected, she heads over to the Continental Hotel to speak with Winston, who's the manager. She tells him her mission, and when he asks if he suggested she didn't, she clearly replies that she would smile and nod, then ignore him. The girl really isn't giving up. She admits that the director has already warned her about them and the rules so she can appreciate his reluctance. Winston shares that whatever information she thinks the cult has might not be in her best interest to know. Eve needs to know, and Winston makes reference to the Garden of Eden and how they were cast out because of knowing too much. He asks if she's prepared to be cast out again, but Eve places the coin he gave her back then on the table, determined to know. In resignation, Winston tells her it's not a tribe, but rather a cult that kills not just for business, but for sport. Eve asks where she can find them, but no one knows their precise location. However, they are monitored when they stay at the hotels. Winston shares that there's a man who bears the mark staying at one of their hotels in Prague presently. She asks what the man's business is, and Winston proceeds to make a call.
Hello, my dear.
It turns out that the man, Daniel Pine, had his contract submitted 3 days ago. His bounty is set at $2 million, and he is currently at the Prague Continental in room 315. No outside calls have been logged, and he's purchased a huge amount of room service, which is mostly ice cream. A hard copy is sent through fax, and Winston hands this to Eve. Charon, the receptionist, interrupts, telling Winston that he has a call from the director, which makes Winston wish Eve good luck. Next, Eve heads to Prague and checks into the hotel, precisely asking for room 314. A group on a stakeout for Pine notices her but holds their position. Eve wastes no time strapping her gun and sneaking into Pine's room, but the sniper from the other group notices her and reports to Lena, an underworld contact who provides contract services through the comms. In the room, Eve is shocked to see a young girl who introduces herself as Ella, and she quickly hides her gun from her. She is shocked once more to learn Pine is her father, but the sound of a corked pistol from behind makes her surrender. Pine calls out to Ella, directing her safely behind him, and asks who Eve is. She tells him about her father's murder by men with a similar mark to his, and that she just wants to know where to find them. Pine drops the rifle, telling her she has no idea what she just walked into. The sniper tells Lena that Pine and Eve are just talking, making her place a call to the contract services, instructing them to double the bounty on Pine. Winston is alerted of this, alongside other assassins already in the hotel. Pine also sees the alert and tells Eve she just made everything worse. He shares that the people she's looking for are surrounding the hotel at the moment, hoping someone breaks the rules and takes the bait, and that someone is Eve. Eve wonders why they would be at the hotel, and Pine shares that they just want him removed from the face of the earth to get to Ella. Before he can say more, the assassins break into the room. But Pine shoots the first man square in the head. The other two follow, opening fire while Eve and Pine take cover. Pine takes down one and escapes with Ella, while Eve is stuck fighting with the other. The sniper reports to Lena about Pine's movement, and she leaves the lobby. Eve finally subdues the assassin and runs after Pine. Meanwhile, Pine encounters more assassins, which he takes down, and Eve joins him. In the elevator, she asks why they want Ella, and Pine shares that it's a cult, so no one ever gets out. He asks her to help get Ella out because she deserves a better life, but Eve can't. That's not the reason she's there. Pine identifies her as Kikimora. He pleads for her help to protect Ella, and he'll tell her where to find them in trade. Eve finally gives in and takes Ella out into the streets while Pine deals with the assassins. Unfortunately, he gets shot, while Eve gets struck on the head by Lena, and Ella is taken. Lena reports back to the Chancellor about the mission and tells him about Eve. Though they don't know her yet, Lena tells him she left Eve for the security at the Continental. After some questioning by the Prague manager and Eve asserting she didn't break any rules by eliminating anyone, the other assassins are shot down except for Eve. Afterward, she heads over to an establishment and shows the man in charge the picture of the mark. Though he knows about them, he hasn't done business with them and prefers to keep his limited knowledge that way. He then takes her to see the gun she wants to purchase, but they get ambushed by some men who suddenly open fire. The man runs out while Eve ducks. She tries shooting back, but eventually leaves the room, locking the door behind her. There aren't many weapons in the room, but she sees a box of grenades and an old rifle. Using this, she throws the box down, blowing up the assassin, while she also jumps down in the distraction. The shooting continues, and Eve fights with men, using the grenades to blow them up. At this point, the shop is torn apart, and Eve heads up to the gun room. She meets the owner, who inspects the mark on one of the men's hands, seeing it's the same as the cult. With nothing left to lose, he decides to tell Eve about them. Everyone who has gone looking for them has always ended up missing, but whispers suggest that they've been known to gather somewhere deep in the mountains past Abersee and Feldkirch. Eve thanks him and apologizes for his shop. She asks for a car, and he gives her one, which she loads with the bag of weapons she's purchased before driving off. She drives to the mountains but is unknowingly watched by a sniper. Just then, she gets a call from the director who
you
questions
think
her
I would
about
not find
disobeying
out
her orders.
That you
Eve asks her to say who they are, but the director repeats that they do not engage with them. She feels Eve is risking the destruction of their family for her own selfish reasons and instructs her to return immediately, or she would have no choice. Eve is past caring at this point and hangs up on her. She notices a shop displaying ballerina glass domes like the one she has and stops to check them out. She also notices a truck pulling up outside and a man walks in. In a blink of an eye, he brings out his gun to shoot her, but Eve also has the skills of the Flash. They begin an intense fight. The assassin is indeed strong, but Eve finally overpowers him by breaking his arm, then shooting him multiple times. She then heads upstairs but is stopped by the waitress who brandishes a knife. Eve assures her she wouldn't hurt her, thinking she's just an ordinary person, but the waitress suddenly attacks, proving she's more than just a waitress. They begin fighting, and Eve realizes that the waitress is just as strong as her. The fight soon turns into a game of who can break the most plates on each other's heads to get the gun. And the waitress wins, but Eve overpowers, taking the gun and locking her in the room. However, that's not the end of trouble, because more assassins arrive. Eve notices them and sees she doesn't have many bullets left to take them all. Thinking quickly, she grabs a knife and straps it to her gun with tape. It seems this can be another definition of a two-edged sword. The first man comes and she attacks, which draws the other's attention. She manages to take them all down, but gets stabbed in the back by a knife throw. The door holding the waitress gives way, but before she can pick up a gun to shoot an injured Eve is quicker and shoots her clean in the head. She then pulls out the knife and uses it to end the life of the man responsible for the throw. Well, that's just karma doing its thing. She rushes out of the building, but the sniper sees her. He reports back to the Chancellor that she hasn't been contained, which makes him order full protocols. The sniper does as instructed, and the sound of bells from speakers suddenly takes over the environment. Knowing what this means, residents begin rushing inside for safety, while the assassins begin coming outside with their weapons. Unknowingly to Eve, she encounters one, but just as he tries to shoot, she is faster and shoots him instead before running. Another follows, but she takes her out without a sweat. However, the next few aren't so easy, but she manages to take them down as well. It seems the more she takes down, the more they are replaced, as she's attacked within seconds. Her back gets slashed, but she manages to take the man down. Unfortunately, she gets ambushed by several others, and Lena also arrives. After seeing a glimpse of the Ruska Roma tattoo on her back, Lena hits her head with the butt of her rifle, making her pass out. Meanwhile, the Chancellor talks to Ella. She asks about her father, but he tells her he was trying to take her away from them. Ella boldly tells him she hates him, but they get interrupted by Lena. She shares that Eve is Ruska Roma. Afterward, he goes to meet Eve, who's regained consciousness. He tells her about meeting with the director years ago, where they both had detailed conversations on their roles. Eve insists that Ruska Roma has nothing to do with the situation, but the Chancellor feels otherwise. He asks why she's there, sharing that if she's come for Ella, then she's made a mistake. Ella is his granddaughter, and everything will be hers in the future. Apparently, Pine is his son. Eve is shocked that he put a contract on his own son, but the Chancellor just scoffs. He shares that the town is where people like her come to live and have a family, but Eve angrily tells him she once had a family, but his people took that away from her. She tells him of the execution of her father and how they tried to take her. He is surprised with the last information, but tells her something about fate before leaving the room. He meets up with Lena and tells her about the situation, revealing that Eve is her sister.
She's your sister.
Before Lena can wrap her head around this information, sounds of gunshots ring from the room, and he rushes back. Of course, Eve is the cause of this, but Lena surprisingly takes down an assassin who tries to shoot Eve, making Eve escape. The Chancellor wonders what Lena is up to, but she just follows Eve. She gets to a particular building, but Eve attacks, aiming her gun at Lena. When Lena drops the bombshell about them being sisters, Eve is extremely shocked. She tells Eve they were both born in the town, and it is Eve's true home. Eve insists they are nothing alike since Lena's people eliminated her father. Lena reminds her he was their father too, but says he betrayed them, which made their mother pay the price. The Chancellor had only been trying to save her and bring her back home, but Eve yells that Javier was trying to give her a normal life. Lena feels there is nothing normal about her own life, but Eve tells her she chose that path, unlike the cult, which forces children into its way of life. Outside, an assassin reports their location to the Chancellor, who orders them to take both sisters out. The assassin hesitates, but the Chancellor repeats the command. The home Lena thought she had was a lie all along. Grenades are thrown inside, and both sisters run when they realize what that means. The explosions hit them hard. Wounded, Eve crawls to Lena, who has taken the brunt of the blast. Lena admits she was only 9 when they told her Eve had passed, confessing she missed her. With that, she takes her last breath. The assassins enter to confirm the deed, but Eve cuts them down with a sword. Through the radio, the Chancellor asks if the mission is complete. Eve answers, telling him it will only be over when he is eliminated. He then contacts the director, explains the situation, and declares war on the Ruska Roma. The director suggests sending someone capable to deal with the problem, but tells him to call off his men. He gives her a midnight deadline, and she agrees. Nogi reminds her that Eve is family, but she says Eve has made her choice. Eve's thoughts of home had also been a lie. The person chosen turns out to be John Wick. Seeing this, the Chancellor issues a broadcast, stating that no one is to engage until the bells ring. Any who disobey will be cast out. Eve hears this and wonders what he is planning. She soon comes across John Wick and is shocked to realize the director sent him to eliminate her. He tells her it is her choice to stay or leave. She reminds him those were her exact words to him back in the theater, but he repeats that it is still her choice. Dropping her bag with the pistol inside, she says she is not leaving.
I'm not leaving.
Then suddenly shoots at him before taking cover. He approaches from the other side, gun aimed, but doesn't fire. He insists she doesn't have to do this, but Eve attacks anyway. They fight, and he eventually overpowers her. With a knife to her throat, he tells her to leave and walks away. Determined, Eve charges from behind. He keeps telling her to go, but she continues fighting. At one point, he holds his gun to her face and orders her to leave. Eve tells him the Chancellor eliminated her father, so she wants to finish what she started. John Wick relents. With only 28 minutes left until midnight, he gives her that time to act before facing the consequences. Eve heads to the house, ambushes an assassin, and blows him up. Another assassin reports to the Chancellor that John Wick has let her go and she is now on the attack, suggesting full re-engagement. The Chancellor agrees, unleashing all citizens.
Every citizen.
A few approach Eve, but she takes them down in an intense fight. More follow, but she mows them down with a machine gun. She enters the armory, but she's spotted by the sniper. Inside, she arms herself with multiple weapons. An announcement is made on her location, and strike teams head her way. Meanwhile, the Chancellor orders Dex, a top assassin, to destroy
You
her.
find her and you destroy her.
Some assassins enter the armory but are blown apart instantly. Others follow through tunnels, only to face Eve wielding a blowtorch as she engulfs them in flames. Dex acquires his own blowtorch, and soon it becomes blowtorch versus blowtorch. Fire catches Dex's leg, but he ignores it and keeps attacking. Just before he can finish her, Eve escapes with her coat on fire. After dosing the flames, she takes out more assassins, burning them mercilessly. Dex counters with his own flames, forcing her back. She escapes again and incinerates more attackers. Seeing the threat, the sniper advises the Chancellor to relocate for Hallstatt survival, as John Wick's location is now unknown. The Chancellor agrees. Eve's blowtorch fuel runs out just as Dex launches another blast. She flees into a building, finds an industrial water hose, and sprays it at his fire. They push against each other, flame versus water, until both fuel and water run out. From above, John Wick shoots Dex down, blowing him up. He then disables the loudspeakers. Assassins target him, but he dispatches them easily. Eve uses binoculars to locate the Chancellor's car and sees Ella inside. John Wick continues fighting off attackers while Eve shoots the car, forcing it to stop. She shoots down the sniper driving, leaving the Chancellor no choice but to step out. He asks if she really thinks she can save Ella. He claims nothing will change, the system will endure as it has for 1,000 years. She never had a choice since she was chosen, just like Lena and Ella. It is her fate. Eve just looks at Ella, raises her gun, and shoots the Chancellor dead. From his vantage point, John Wick chooses not to shoot Eve, and she takes Ella away. He calls the director, informing her the Chancellor is eliminated.
He is dead.
Ella is returned to Pine, who is alive and receiving treatment, and he hugs her. Eve meets Winston, who wishes her safety but warns that cutting off the snake's head doesn't mean taking out the body. This means they will come for her. Meanwhile, the director finds a ballerina glass dome music box on her desk. Eve goes to watch Tatiana dance as the contract service is contacted. An alert comes through, and Eve realizes that a $5 million bounty has been placed on her head. Well, that is a story for another day.